Hi guys, my name is nana.misa. I'm a London-based cinematographer, and in today's video, I'm going to take you guys through my color grading workflow and process. Take you guys through some clips and how I approach the grade for these clips based on what the client brief was and what the final intention for the video will be for the client. I wouldn't describe myself as a professional colorist at all, but I have learned a few things over the years in terms of color grading through practicing and online tutorials. I use DaVinci Resolve to edit and grade all of my footage, as I feel DaVinci Resolve has such powerful color grading tools. It makes it a lot easier, especially when you're first starting out in color grading. I feel the tools make it a lot easier for you to push and pull colors and push your grade a little bit further. So now let's jump into Resolve and I'll start talking you through these grades. So we're in Resolve now, and before I start showing you the process of color grading the clips, the first thing I think I need to show you is how I set up the color management. So what you can see here is the color management tab. Probably be easier if I show you where you can pull that from. So down by this little mechanical cogwheel here, that brings up your project settings. And in here, there's a tab called color management. And in that tab, what I will do is this way you can manage your color management. So for the color science, I set it up as DaVinci YRGB. I think it's just naturally defaulted on that one, so I just leave it as that. For the timeline color space, I set that as DaVinci intermediate, DaVinci wide gamut stroke intermediate. The reason I do this is because this as a color space is bigger than Rec 709, so it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of pushing and pulling the color grade. So I set it at that. But for the output color space, I set it as Rec 709A, because I was finding in the past when I was exporting the grades, when I look at it once it's exported, it wouldn't look the same. The colors would look a bit washed out and faded, and this was bugging me for a while. Went online, did a bit of research, and found out that if you're a Mac user, you need to have your output color spaces Rec 709 so that your colors look the way they, well, your grades essentially look the way they look whilst you was editing the grade. So now that's set up, let's jump into some of the clips and I'll explain them to you. So as this was for BBC film, it was for creating an electronic press kit for this BBC film. Once again, as I said, they wanted a clean, neutral look. How I usually start when I know I'm going for a clean look is I will start with 3 simple nodes. So I have 3 nodes. And what I tend to do is the last node will be the look, which will be a LUT, so I will just set this up as label as the look. So, okay, cool. So then I would label the next node is what I will have as my primaries. So for this one, for this node is where I'll manage things such as the exposure level, so your lift, gamma, gain. Then I'll have a node, the first node will be corrections. So this is where I will manage like any white balance issues that the footage may have. With the look, I'll apply a LUT. And I created my own LUT primarily because I tend to work with different skin tones, and although these other LUTs really work well with all skin tones, but there's just a certain look I like to go for, especially when I'm working with darker skin tones, and creating this LUT allows me to have a LUT that works both well with lighter and darker skin tones for the look that I'm going for. So as I film with Blackmagic cameras, I have one for the Pocket 4K as well as the 6K, both for Gen 4 and Gen 5. So this footage here was filmed on a Pocket 4K and was filmed on Gen 4. So first thing, it's a little bit too warm for me, so I will cool that down. So what I'll do is I will go to the primaries in my in the color tab. Sorry, keep zooming in. And what I'll do is I will cool it off a little bit by going to the offset wheel and introduce a little bit more blue into the image. So if you see, this is what we had previously, and now that I've added a bit more blue, it's cooled it down a bit, but it's still got a bit of the warm tones in it. So I like where that's sitting. And in terms of my primaries, what I might do is just lift the highlights and the midtones just a little bit more. So that brought it down. By the way, apologies if you're seeing some wild movements in the grades. The Magic Mouse is a bit sensitive. So I'm just lift that a little bit, just to lift the overall ambience up. So if we have a look at that, it's just lifted the levels of the overall image a bit. So now in terms of where this is sitting, I'm liking what I've got here. Now, what I'll tend to do as well is I try and keep my grades fairly simple. I don't add too many nodes. I just have these 3 simple nodes. I may add one more node, and I'm going to show you that now. In terms of, sometimes I will add a node just for the skin tone, just to make sure that the skin tone is looking right. I mean, off the bat, I feel like the skin tones are looking good in this, but what I like to do is just add an additional node just to make sure my skin tones are looking, are sitting where I want them to sit. So what I'll do here is I'll then take the qualifier tool and place it on the skin tone. And once you press Shift H, you can see where your mask is. So it's masking out everything else that isn't this skin tone. And down here, you've got your controls for your hues, your saturation and your luminance. So by adjusting these, you can improve the key a little bit better. So here we are adjusting that to try and just really isolate just the skin tone. So this is kind of a good point. One thing I've been trying to improve on is how I use these qualifier tools, but I think there's a good starting point. So here you've got on the vector scope the skin tone line indicator. So from what I can see here, it's leaning a little bit towards the red channel, but that's not the most dramatic thing, because with Caucasian skin, the skin tones tend to lean more toward the red tones. And with dark skin tones, for people with a lot more melanin, so black people or South Asian people, you will find that your more brown skin tones, you will look for yellow tones within the skin tone. So I tend to lean things more towards the yellows when I'm working dark skin tones, and more towards the red when I'm working with light skin tones. So what I'll do here is I'll tweak it just a little bit, because I want it to hug the skin tone line just a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll go to my curves and I'll jump to the hue versus hue curves, and then I will select the skin tone. Now what I'll do is I keep the mask as is, just so that I can see the skin tone indicator, and then I will just pull it down just a little bit away from the red, nothing too crazy, and then I will lift that, and then we'll see where we're sitting now. So just took out a little bit of the red. I may even put a little bit back in, just a touch. Just a little bit, just a touch there. Yeah, I think a lot of the time when I'm grading it, sometimes it's just micro adjustments, nothing too wild. But it's just those little tweaks. So here, just remove just a little bit more of the redness. So here I think we're in a good space with that. So if I make this bigger, I think the skin tones are sitting nicely. You're still getting a little bit of the redness, but you're not getting too much red in that. And I think that's it for me. For the look we're going for, this is working fine. So the next clip, this is for a skincare brand. And for this one, we were shooting a series of how-to videos which would sit on their website as well as their Instagram page. So for this, once again, you want a clean, neutral look. That's what the brand wanted. So what I'll do here is, once again, similar node tree. So once again, I like quite a fairly simple node tree. So then I'll just go down here to my LUT. Where are we? We are here. Now this was filmed on the Pocket 6K Gen 5. And so that's brought it to a Rec 709, more natural Rec 709. But as you can see, image still looks a bit flat. In terms of the color correction, if I'm looking at my RGB parade, I think we're good in terms of the white balance. So now I think mainly the work needs to be done within the primaries to bring a bit of contrast to the image. So what I'll do is I'll jump in to the primaries, and I'll start by lifting the gain just a touch. At first, I used to always just whack the gain all the way, your highlights all the way to the top. But just another thing to note, so with the scopes, I never like my highlights to hit above 1,000, 100 IRE. 1,000 IRE, I think is the correct way to say it. Not too sure, but also my shadows, I don't let them hit 50. So what I do is I put these reference marks here on my lows at 50 and my highs at 1,000. So what I'll do is I will boost the gain just a little bit, the highlights. Then I'll start bringing down the shadows. And once you start doing that, you start seeing contrast come back into the image. And bring down the midtones just a touch. And it's like you're finessing it. It's almost balancing between all three of them. Bring down the shadows a bit. That gives you more latitude to start pulling up the gain, pull that down a bit more, and then really bring down the shadows. Then let's have a look at this now. So it's not gonna play well because it's quite slow. So let's get a frame here where you're seeing everything. So this is looking good for me in terms of the exposure levels and the contrast in it. What I might do is just bring up the gain a little bit more, just a little bit more here, and then bring down the gamma. So bring down your midtones just a touch, just to bring a bit more contrast to the skin tone. So pull that frame. So yeah, this is looking good. The backdrop, I think, is a little bit too dark for me, and I think I can bring those levels up. So for that, what I'll actually do is I will actually create another node here. Bring this here. Get rid of that. Just before this one. Okay, yes. So what I'll do is I will add a qualifying mask to everything. So I just want to isolate the background. So then I can bring this here. And so what we're going to do, we're going to impact everything other than, we're just going to impact the background and not the model. So what I'll do is I want to bring up the highlights of that. So what I'll do is I'll come out of the mask in this one, and then I can just lift that. So that's giving, and then lift some of the shadows as well on that, bringing that up a little bit more. So this is what we have now, this is what we had before. Just brought that up a bit. But this is where you have to be careful, because some of that has impacted the skin tones a bit. So it's more where the Kia was working. So I have to probably look at that key or the qualifier. Just so let me bring that up again. And what I can do here is really narrow that down. So here, that's more of a cleaner key. So let's have a look now. So let's come out of that. So this is with it off, this is with it on, and you're not impacting the skin tones as much. So that, I'm pleased with that. Let's jump on to the next clip. So The next clip we have, this is for a luxury shoe brand, and this was for a series of fashion films that we filmed out in Dubai. This one was done in Dubai. There's another one we did in Morocco, but this one was done in Dubai. And for this one, the client wanted something very filmic, as there was a series of short fashion films that were going to be on the website, as well as being used for advertising online and as well as social media content. So for this one, I wanted something a little bit more stylized. So for this one, I wasn't going for just a very simple, clean, neutral Rec 709 kind of look. So I wanted to go something a little bit more filmic. So for this one, when I'm going for that approach, it's a little bit different in terms of the node tree. So the first node that we'll add is a color space transform to have the footage set to be able to add a film LUT onto it. So Resolve has two really good film LUTs that I really like, a Kodak one and a Fuji one, and they have them in various different flavors, and I'll explain that a little bit shortly, just show you how that works. So what I'll do is apply the color space transform, and what you do here is, I know that the input color space for this, because I shot this on the Pocket 4K, I shot this in DaVinci Wide Gamut. It's DaVinci Wide Gamut because it's Blackmagic Design shot on a Pocket 4K. I shot this with Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. So that was the input gamma, and the output color space. The film look LUTs that come with DaVinci Resolve, they work best in, they work best. The ones I like using are the Rec 709 ones. So the output color space for this needs to be Rec 709. Just get that changed. Then the output gamma. This is where, in order to get the best out of the LUT, you need to ensure that they're set to film log, because these LUTs were designed to work against footage that is created that was recorded in film log. So a generic film log scan that you can convert this to is Cineon film log. Then I'll work on the other node trees that I had here. So, similar node tree that I had previously. So what I'll do is I'll add the 3 node trees, which will be a LUT. But this time round, it will be, it'll be the film LUT. What am I saying? Sorry, it's been a long day. So you go into my LUT the LUT folders here, and you will see a LUT folder called Film Looks. And then you've got different flavors of the LUT. You've got the DCI-P3. I've never really used those versions. I just use the Rec 709 one. So you've got the Fujifilm 351 3D I think that is. And then you've got the Kodak 2383. Now for this one, I'm going to use a Fujifilm. Now, as you can see here, they've got D55, D60, and D65. What these represent is D55 is more of a warmer tone. So this LUT is more of a warmer version of the LUT. So you're going to get more reds, more of a red. The red tones are kind of brought out, the warmer tones. Then you've got your D60, which is more neutral. So that's a combination of matching your reds and your cool tones, your warm tones and your cool tones, should I say. And then you've got your D65, which leans more towards the blue, so your cooler tones. And I tend to always just stick with the neutral tones. So this one. So as you can see, straight away off the bat, we need to start working on the primaries. What I will do is I will bring down the shadows a touch, bring down the highlights, and then bring down the mid-tones. Now what I always do with the film logs, with the film LUTs, should I say, I find that you need to add saturation, especially for my taste. So what I usually do is I would boost up the saturation to 85. So sometimes that might be a bit much, so I knock it down to 70, see where that is sitting. I think we can bring that up just a little bit more, maybe bring that to 70, happy medium 73, let's go with. So here we're seeing Now I can kind of see what the saturation is. I'll continue to work on the primaries. So just bring that down, bring the shadows down. I still want to have the gain lifted a little bit, and then bring that in. So as it was really bright, I want to also ensure that the contrast is working well. So in a stage like this, I would boost the contrast, add a little bit more contrast. So let's see where we're sitting with that. I like where we are with that. I think I'll just bring down the shadows a bit more. Just to bring a bit more contrast into that. I think we're sitting nicely here. Oh, it's just jumping all over the place because it's running super slow. Apologies. As I'm screen recording, so let me just jump back to the clips and jump back to that one. Cool. So for me here, I still feel I can still work on bringing some more contrast in the mid-tone. So I'll bring that down quite a bit here. That's looking like what I'm liking that a lot. You're getting a lot of pop within the feathers. The colors are nice. It's got a clean filmic look. And now you can see in the parade here that it's leaning there's a lot of red tones in this. Now, if it was something else, like let's say what I was doing for the skincare, I might really make sure the white balance 100% perfect. But given that this is a fashion film and we want to really emphasize that this was shot in the sun, I don't mind those warmer tones coming through. So what I would do is I'll just tweak the blues just to cool it down just a little bit, but not too much, because if I was really to bring it to a neutral level, it would be something like here. So around here, but I might just pull it down just a touch, because I still want to keep that warm tone, but here it was just a little bit too warm, and here I think is perfect for me. And what I like about this, by bringing those blues up, you're bringing in a little bit more blue in the sky, and especially the blue in the water. That's really at a good place. I really like that, and you're getting a lot of good color contrast by the water in the pool. So this, I'm 100% pleased with this, and this was, if I recall correctly, how I graded some of the other footage, but I really like this grade here. Let's jump on to the next clip. So this, as I mentioned, this was for promo for an album that was coming out, and the gentleman in the video is a guitarist that played on the album. It was for a group called Show Them Camp. And this gentleman here is called Instacat David. He's an amazing guitarist. And what we did was we filmed some sessions with him talking about the process of making the album and his part in the album. So we went outdoors and he just played some riffs on his guitar, and then we did an interview as well. So for this, the band and the label, they wanted something very stylized, something very organic. So once again, what I will do is I will add the color space transform, because I'm gonna use a film like on this one as well. So I'll add this color space transform. So bung that on. So here we have this one. So where this was filmed, Enjoy Gamut, Black Magic Design, Film Gen 5. Once again, make the output color space Rec 709, and make the film, the output gamma Sinian film log. Where are we? We are here. So great. And then, so that's CST. Well, let me just label this so that we know this is the color space transform. And then I will add the other primaries. So you got your corrections, your primaries, and then the look. So for this one, I will use the Kodak LUT this time around. So go for the Kodak 2383, Cool. So as you can see here with the primaries, well, I'll start by adding some saturation. E3, I think is a good starting point. I think with this one, I can maybe boost it a little bit. Maybe have that at 80. Let's see where that sits. Have that at 80. Okay. Might dial that back a bit. Cool. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is here you're getting a lot of green within this, which is understandable given you got a lot of plants around, but I just want to boost some of the blues and just adjust this a bit more. So bringing up some of those blues there. Let me just move this along a bit. And then what I would do here is there's a lot of, it's more of a yellow tint than a green tint that I'm getting from the plants. So I think I want to adjust how those look. So what I'll do here is just before the look, I would add another node. Let me just make this a bit bigger. So as you can see, look, I want to adjust the greens in these plants. I want to make them pop a bit. They're looking a bit, well, not leaning a bit more towards the yellow than vibrant green. So I will adjust those. So for that, what I'll do is I will go to my curves wheel, and then I will go to the hue versus hue. Sorry, pick the qualifier. Go to my curves wheel, go to the hue versus hue. So what I might do is first, let me just label this as greens. And then I will click on that. Now I will drag this down to bring more of that green out. So now I think I'll work on the primaries. So bring down just to get a little bit more contrast. So it's looking a bit flat. So bring down the shadows. Let them hug that line there. Just boost the gains just a little bit here. And then just I might bring the midtones down just a little bit. I'm liking where everything is sitting here in terms of the colors and in terms of the levels. I might just once again bring the midtones down just a little bit. So looking at skin tones, I might see if I can have a play around with that just to adjust that a little bit more. So what I would do is I would create a node for the skin tones here. So let's see. Okay, see if I can tweak the qualifier. It might be a bit tricky just really isolating those skin tones because you got a lot of tones that are similar color within that. So I have to play around with it and see what I get. So let's have a play around. Okay, let's see if I can adjust. It's gonna be a bit tricky. As I said, I always have difficulty with a qualifier, but let me see what I can do with this one. So I feel his skin tone is looking a little bit reddish. So what I might just do is just highlight here and just try and, yeah, I'm liking that. This is without. This is with. As I mentioned, we wanted this to be a little bit more organic, a little bit more stylized. What I like to do in these situations is I like to add radial blur. I think radial blur gives the image a good look. So let me just jump up here. So where are we? Blur, radial blur. So, okay, let me create another node before this one. Right, so I pop this radial blur on. So I've added this radial blur, and obviously this is way too strong. So I'm gonna bring this down. So bring it down, bring it down. I usually like to have it about 2.8, 2.7. I would say, let's go for about 2.8, 2.86. Let's see that. So here, as you can see, what it's done is just adding a bit of radial blur, giving it almost similar to like you would get on the Helios, with that almost making it look as if you've got like a swirly bokeh. What I would do just to finish this off is I would add some film grain. Nothing too major, just a little bit of film grain. So where are we? I just gotta move this so I can see film grain. Let's just type this. Film grain. Just label that grain. Okay, now I like to go for the 16mm 500T, and let me just make this bigger so we can see. So the film grain is on, and what I like to do is I like to boost it just a little bit. I don't like it too obvious, so I might go about here, right? But then I will also bring down the grain size. So what I like to do is I'll zoom in and then bring down the grain size just about like 2.2. This is how it's looking. I'm really liking the look I'm getting from this. The grain is there. Let me just make this full resolution, make sure that's timeline is full resolution so I can see what that final look is. So I really like this look. It's given a more of a grittier look. I like what I've done with the greens to make those greens pop a little bit more and bring a lot more color contrast, and given it, I think it gives the footage a little bit more depth, because as you can see here, if I just bring up the greens, it was looking a bit flat, a little bit muted, but with that, I think it gives it a lot of pop. You know, I did some tweaks to the skin tones. It was looking a bit red, as you can see there. That's looking more natural. You had your radial blur. You take that off, it's quite clean. Then you got your film grain, which was there. So this is something that I'm comfortable with and happy with. So that was how I color grade footage based on different briefs from the client. As you can see, I try with different styles depending on what the client is looking for. And I try and keep my color grades simple. If I know it's gonna be complex, I will ask the client maybe to think about getting a bit of a bigger budget to allow us to send the footage to a colorist to get that graded to the level that they would need. But for now, thank you for watching. If you did like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, if you'd like to see more videos like this about my color grading process, and definitely want to hear back from you in terms of feedback, in terms of what you guys do with your color grades and how you like to grade. But for now, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.